Welcome back to my devlog on the road to making a standalone VR game. This episode I'll focus on some of the early systems I made for my combat system, as well as talk about a game jam that I entered this month. This was my first ever combat prototype area, where I first tried out basic implementations of a weapon swing to deal damage. One of the first things I made here was a working health bar that would update automatically when a weapon makes contact with its hitbox. Now that I could use lerping to animate objects, I was able to create a health bar for the first time without using any animators. I spent a bit of time trying out different styles of health bars before I could settle on a style I liked. I was heavily inspired, especially by the fighting game genre. I really wanted a health bar that not only visibly shrunk when taking damage, but also showed a secondary bar underneath it which lagged or trailed behind it to clearly show how much damage was lost in a short amount of time. This was a little forward thinking on my part because I knew that I wanted to do something with combos for my combat system, so having a health bar that behaved this way was really important to me. I also built in a damage number system, as well as adding some additive effects to the health bar when a hit is detected. The health bar will also change in color if the hit is a critical strike. The design for the health bar is super simple for now, since this is just for the R&D phase of development. Once I move to full game production, I can make the health bar match the UI design of that game more. One element of the health bar I'm still undecided on right now is placement, and I'll need to do more research to see how first-person games handle this. The difficult bit here is that non-VR games will place it on the player's HUD, which is something I'd like to avoid for VR. For now, I've placed it above the enemy as a placeholder location, but I'm not sure if that's the best location for it. But since making this, it's been at least over half a year now, and while I'm still undecided on the location, I do dynamically adjust the health bar location based on your distance to the enemy. This helps keep the bar in view without being glued to your head. This isn't a finalized thing by any means, but it's a quick solution that came up to stop myself from constantly looking up when I was close to the enemy. Whilst it's not a visible bar, I've also added a stagger system that is popular in a lot of games like the Soul series. The concept behind it is simple. If the stagger value is depleted to 0, the enemy will be stunned for a short duration. I like this since it rewards the player for being aggressive, so I wanted to see if I could implement it myself. The current version of the stagger system has a working stun state when it reaches 0, but I've also built in an interruption mechanic to the system where the player will be able to interrupt any action after a couple of hits. I also gave the stagger bar constant healing, so the bar is constantly trying to recover, making the stagger system feel more like a tug of war with the player, although it does work more in favour of the player to not be too punishing. I implemented this mainly to prevent staggers feeling predictable with how many hits it might take to trigger it, and to punish the player a bit for playing it safe and rewarding the player for being more aggressive. Since I had to create new animations for its stun state and when it gets interrupted, I also end up creating an additive hit detect animation, so even when it isn't being interrupted, there's still a visible representation when it's attacked. The style of additive hit detect is what I want to go with, instead of the very common ragdoll physics-based hit detection that is used in so many VR games now. After playing so many, the novelty of ragdoll physics on enemies has kind of worn off on me, and I think there's too many negatives that get introduced into the game design for these games that use it heavily. Enemies getting stuck on themselves or others, or having very dumbed down animations or logic to accommodate the physics. On the subject of hit feedback, after creating the additive hit detection animations, I wanted to go a bit further with providing some sort of visual feedback to the player when they hit an enemy. And one of my favourite ways to do this is to add Hitstop. And Hitstop was very simple to implement. It's just a matter of freezing the animator in place so it just pauses. And since a lot of my logic is basically waiting for the animation to complete before it does the next set of logic, it all just fits in perfectly. So now I can do actual hit stop when attacking the enemy, and one of my goals in future is to increase the hit stop based on the type of weapon used. So imagine using a heavy sword that should have a bigger hit stop than that of like a dagger. This past month, I took part in the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam, aka GMTK Game Jam 2026. This was my second year taking part, and I teamed up with Cyan Laser and Fiona again in a new one. We had a lot of fun making our Game Jam entry last year to the theme of loot, which we called Hang Zen. and this year the theme was Countdown. We had 4 days to come up with something, and we're really proud of the results. We spent the first day discussing ideas that fit the theme whilst trying to come up with something we felt could be a unique take on the Countdown theme compared to what most people would be doing. We came up with a lot of cool ideas, but settled on making a reverse roguelike where the countdown manifested in de-leveling the hero character from max level down to level 1, making the game harder and harder the more you progressed. We learnt a lot of lessons from our first game jam last year and quickly jumped into concept and planning to give us as much time as possible to develop it. I scribbled some basic enemy concepts before we came up with the setting of the game, something that could be molded into anything as long as the functionality remained. This led to the realization that we could also incorporate the countdown theme into telegraphing the attacks. Deciding the setting of the game was definitely the hardest part, lots of back and forth and debating each other's suggestions and ideas, but we eventually landed on a comical take on a noir setting where you play as a mob boss or kingpin type character fighting against the gangster birds. I was in charge of the game design, creating the environment and animating the characters. Fiona was in charge of creating and texturing the characters as well as coming up with the general visual art style and language and the setting for the game, while Laser handled pretty much all the logic and bringing everything together. Despite being super busy to take part in this year's game jam, the last member of our original game jam team from last year, Legends, still managed to come to the rescue to help us out in the final hours by making some much needed sound effects, so we ended up having a full team reunion by the end. As the game jam came to a close, we had to cut a lot of ideas out, and we were still adding things within the last hour of the game jam, but we were really happy with what we came up with. The game jam has ended now, but if you're still curious about trying out our entry, I'll include a link in the description below. That's all for this month's devlog, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the little side quest I had with the game jam as well. Look forward to next month's, where I'll most likely go over more player systems that I've made that work with the combat system. If you enjoyed this and you want to see more, please leave a comment, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, the usual, and I'll see you next month. Bullet Time Agent is coming to Steam and Metastore later this year. 2 of my close friends over at Sci-Fi Studios are handling the port to both pcvr and Quest. It'll also support desktop play as well. Please show some love and support by giving that game a wishlist on Steam. Link is in the description, and it'll help a lot with giving the game visibility as it gets close to launch.